the news, Senate passes medium-term expenditure framework retaining oil benchmark at $57 per barrel. Group advocates grassroots sensitization as the world marks International Day of Peace. And Okonjo-Iweala joins call against unequal access to COVID-19 vaccines. Many thanks for joining us on News Now. I'm Oni Adekunle. Efforts to improve Nigeria's tourism sector has received a boost with the recognition of Kwagir, an art form of the TV people, on the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO's list of cultural heritage. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed disclosed this after the weekly cabinet meeting held in Abuja on Wednesday. According to the minister, this will further help to preserve some of Nigeria's heritage through generations.
Those of us who are familiar with Kwagir, which is the TV theatrical performance, is one of the flagship of our cultural performances in Nigeria. You know, it's actually started as a form of storytelling, then dramatized, and it's supposed to teach morals, you know, to our people. I'm proud to say that today, this theatrical performance has been inscribed on the intangible list of UNESCO, and this brings to 5 the number of such, you know, intangible cultural heritages we have. The major advantages of having these cultural heritages, you know, listed is that it draws and it attracts traffic. It attracts tourism traffic and tourists to the country. At the same time, it attracts funding for the conservation and the preservation of this intangible heritage.
Lai Mohammed also briefed on the memo presented by the Minister of Health on the upward review for the emergency supply, installation and maintenance of all 38 oxygen plants nationwide.
The Federal Reserve Council actually approved the sum of 5.615 million, 5.61 billion naira to 4, you know, major contractors for the emergency supply, installation and maintenance of 38 oxygen plants in various parts of the country. Regrettably, the 4 companies also came back recently with the same complaints, ranging from fluctuation in the foreign exchange and to the scarcity of these plants all over the world as a result of material, as a result of COVID-19. So they presented a memo for augmentation in the sum of 836 million naira, and this was also approved.
The Senate has passed the 2022 to 2024 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF), retaining the oil benchmark for the 2022 budget at $57 per barrel. The upper legislative chamber also put the daily crude oil production at 1.88 million barrels per day and the exchange rate of 410 naira to $1. The lawmakers equally adopted an expected gross domestic product growth rate at 4.20%, while inflation rate was pegged at 13%. These resolutions were reached on Wednesday after a debate on the report of the Joint Committees on Finance and National Planning, chaired by Senator Adeola Solomon.
The 410 rate that was proposed by the central bank, that is what the government of the day will use to execute the budget that is to be brought before, that they will be bringing before the National Assembly. And that is termed to be the official rate the government will be used to exchange whatever transaction is going into as far as the budget is concerned. And the recent move by the Central Bank of Nigeria to block the BDC transaction and return all the monies to the banks is one area in which the Central Bank is trying to ensure that the rate between the parallel market and the government rates have some correlation, because the way it is now, we cannot see, because what the dollars is currently going for and what the government is proposing to be used as its own benchmark for this budget, the variation is so wide.
When we had plenty of money, we didn't prioritize the construction of infrastructure in Nigeria. Today, we realize we need to construct infrastructure because that's the only way to develop the country. Unfortunately, we don't have the kind of resources we had before. Now our options are very limited because our revenues are limited. I agree with all my colleagues who said we need to reduce borrowing. There is nothing wrong in continuing with VAT as part of our revenues, because there is no finality in any judgment yet, and therefore we shouldn't confuse our system.
The federal government says it has embarked on a massive recovery of assets belonging to the country and is set to recover £200 million stashed in the United States. The Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, made this known while speaking with journalists on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York. Speaking on the fight against corruption and illicit financial flow into the country, the AGF said government is exploring the possibility of recovering £200 million and other assets. Malami declined to disclose the strategy the federal government will use in making the recovery.
Well, in terms of recovery, as you could rightly remember, at a point we recovered over 322 million US dollars from Swiss. That was around 2017, and then at around 2020. We equally recovered around 311 million US dollars from United States of America, and we have equally tried again to recover, I think, around 78 million pounds from UK associated with Malabu OPL 245, and we are making some insignificant recoveries as well. But as far as the meeting I intend to attend in Washington DC by tomorrow is concerned, we are looking at the possibility of recovering further 200 million pounds, among others.
Every year on September 21, the world celebrates the International Day of Peace to strengthen global commitment for peaceful coexistence. In Nigeria, the Peace Corps of Nigeria and other interest groups are calling for concerted efforts to bring lasting peace to the nation. Our correspondent Folashade Ogunrinde tells us more.
The word peace is often used to describe a period where there is no war and freedom from disturbance. Sadly, this can hardly be felt by the nearly 3.2 million people displaced by violence, banditry, kidnapping, and insurgency in many parts of Nigeria. According to the 2021 Global Peace Index, out of a total of 163 independent states, Nigeria ranks 146 in the World Peace Ranking, mirroring the country's increasing rate of violence. At the Unity Fountain in Abuja, the Peace Corps of Nigeria and other interest groups are advocating national cohesion among all political and religious divide. The National Commandant, Peace Corps of Nigeria, Dixon Akol, says sensitizing youths goes a long way in fostering peaceful coexistence in any society.
There is a process that exposes our youth to the culture of violence today. There is a process that makes our youths to become so angry with the society, and we can redo this process, reverse the trend, change the narrative by sensitizing these youth and start bringing them up in the way of peace building.
If it takes to pleading with these people that have taken these innocent children away from their parents, let the government please do so. We don't know what it's going to take, but we know that if the president sufficiently pleads or orders or instruct or do whatever that these children can come back. Let's not just leave those children because they are not our children. We should do something to bring them back. I'm sure the government would have been doing something, but they should do more.
On his part, former President Rotary Club of Abuja, Royce Stanley, says peace building begins at the grassroots, where violence and societal disturbance often erupts.
I could tell to the world leaders that peace building starts with you and me. So we can continue trying to build peace, but it cannot just be to the president. It has to start from us as individuals because we make up the country. So peace building starts with me, peace building starts with you, and I'm calling on peace builders and advocates from all over the world to please come together, make Nigeria a better place, with the sculpture written on this statue, one nation, one people.
Data from the Global Peace Index indicates that the world has become less peaceful over the last decade, and this is likely to remain because of COVID-19. On the world stage, tension among allies have continued to threaten global peace, raising fears of another Cold War, which US President Joe Biden has assured would not happen. Folashade Ogurinde, TV360 News.
Now, Global Affairs analyst Paul Ejime joins us on News Now to discuss more on the fragility of world peace and how it affects global recovery from the effects of COVID-19. Mr. Ejime, thank you very much for joining us on News Now. Now, it's common knowledge that Nigeria is dealing with a lot of challenges at this moment. But what do you make of this recent ranking by the Global Peace Index, 146th position?
Thank you for having me. Well, it doesn't, it's not a good testament, but what is there is that peace is a collective responsibility. And let's face it, it is not the absence of war or the absence of conflict. It's actually the ability to be able to manage the conflict. Because you cannot leave, if you remove conflict or, out of the world, then the world is incomplete. So, but it is that ability, that capacity to be able to manage whatever conflict or dispute arises. That is what separates, that's what makes the difference. For Nigeria, a lot of factors are responsible. One is that you cannot have peace if there is no justice. You cannot have peace if there is no, respect for human rights, or when people are hungry or angry. And there are factors that, what you call the triggers and drivers of some of these negative factors that tend to work against peace. So Nigeria should do more. Well, Boko Haram, insecurity, and the fact that people are unemployment. These are triggers. These are things, disaffection. Some people talk about marginalization. Others talk about abuse of human rights and the fact that the government is not taking care of their welfare. So these are issues.
Here now. Sorry to interrupt you, but let's talk on the global level now. The Global Peace Index shows that the world as we know it is becoming less peaceful as years go by. Now, especially for the African continent, how crucial is world peace for the development of Africa?
Well, it is important for everybody, for individuals and then nations. By the way, the AU, African Union, had talked about a decade of, to silence the gun. But unfortunately, it looks like the guns are booming everywhere. If you go by the number of coups, military coups that has happened this year alone, from last year and this year, which means that the peace has been unsettled. Peace is disturbed. And why? Because of human, conduct and human character. I think the human beings will have to look at themselves, take a reality check, and see where things are not going well. The government and the governed, all aspects, state and non-state actors, civil society, the faith-based organizations, and everybody, opinion leaders and community leaders. I think everybody will come to the table to talk about it. So once you get that framework or that architecture within the country, then you can extrapolate. It goes across the nation and then to the world, because you cannot give what you don't have. So you need to have peace in your heart, in yourself as an individual, because before you can now begin to send it out. So that is the key thing.
Global Affairs Analyst, Mr. Paul Ejime, I'm afraid that's where we'll have to leave it. But thank you very much for joining us on News Now. Thank you for your contributions. Well, we'll take a break here, but still to come, federal government to clamp down on COVID-19 vaccination card racketeers. We'll bring you details of that and more after this break. Please stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us on News Now. Here's a quick reminder of some of our top stories tonight. The Senate has passed the 2022 to 2024 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF), retaining the oil benchmark for 2022 budget at $57 per barrel. The upper legislative chamber also puts the daily crude oil production at 1.88 million barrels per day and the exchange rate of 410 naira to a dollar. The lawmakers equally adopted an expected gross domestic product growth rate of 4.20%, while inflation rate was pegged at 13%. And we also told you that efforts to improve Nigeria's tourism sector has received a boost with the recognition of Kwagir, an art form from the TV people, on the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO's list of cultural heritage. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed disclosed this after the weekly cabinet meeting held in Abuja on Wednesday. According to the minister, this will further help to preserve some of the nation's heritage through generations. Well, in case you missed any of our news bulletins or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we're at TV360 Online. The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has expressed displeasure over the lopsidedness in COVID-19 vaccine distribution across the world. Okonjo-Iweala said this while speaking to correspondents after meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari, who is currently in New York for the 76th United Nations General Assembly. Our correspondent, Abisola Adebayo, has the details.
Amid the third wave of the coronavirus pandemic, ensuring widespread global access to vaccines remains a major challenge. Director General of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari in New York to brief him on efforts to mobilize COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers to Nigeria.
We're helping them monitor their supply chains, which are very complicated, to see what are the bottlenecks they have, what are the regulatory issues they face, how can we facilitate trade for them. In return, we're asking them to deconcentrate production and go to those parts of the world where they have and invest. For example, on the African continent, we don't want to continue importing 99% of vaccines that we use. And I think it's working. Pfizer announced a $100 million investment in South Africa recently. We're also looking at Nigeria. We're the largest country, and His Excellency Mr. President also wants to develop manufacturing.
According to the World Health Organization, over 50% of the population in high-income countries have been vaccinated, while only 4% of their low-income counterparts have received the jab. Okonjo-Iweala says this development is unacceptable.
It's not something that really is good for the world. Why? Because we have all these variants that are circulating. And if you don't vaccinate people, they'll just migrate from unvaccinated to the vaccinated. So what we're saying is, in order to solve this problem, we have to produce more vaccines, and then we have to distribute them equitably to parts of the world that don't have.
Aside from the international community, Okonjo-Iweala also called for collaborative efforts between the government and the private sector in a bid to create balance between production and demand of vaccines.
Vaccines are like a public good, so they also need investment from the government to match part of what the private sector is doing. We need demand. Vaccine producers will not produce unless they know that the vaccines are going to be purchased. And so, the fact if Nigeria can aggregate its demand, then that will help to persuade them to invest. And I think the Honorable Minister of Health is leading a task force of which I'm a member.
India, the world's largest vaccine producer, halted exports in April, leaving many developing countries without adequate supplies and delayed vaccines for millions of people. It is now set to resume exports in October, prioritizing the UN-backed COVAX initiative aimed at vaccine equity across the globe. Abisola Adebayo, TV360 News.
The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency has accused some health workers of selling fake COVID-19 vaccination cards. Describing the act as a crime punishable by law, Executive Director of the agency, Faisal Shuaib, explains that the agency is collaborating with relevant security agencies to investigate the development. Shuaib also expressed displeasure at the act, saying perpetrators are putting the integrity of the vaccination process at risk.
The DSS and the ICPC are involved. Once these individuals who are involved in this vaccination racketeering are charged to court, then of course the public service rules will now follow, and that could lead to potential suspension and firing of these health workers. But beyond the health workers, those individuals who are also promoting or trying to access cards illegally will also be prosecuted.
WHO's recommendation that entry shouldn't be restricted to those who are fully vaccinated since then. Proof of vaccination shouldn't be a prerequisite for travel and may only deepen inequities, particularly while the vaccine continues to be in such short supply. No region or country should face more restrictions because they are unable to access vaccines. We urge all countries to recall and respect the principle of the international health regulations that vaccine must be approved by WHO and be of suitable quality and universally available before they can be considered.
We'll take another break here, and when we return, it will be time for business news. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Abisola Adebayo is standing by now for the latest in the world of business. Over to you now, Abisola.
Thank you very much, Oyin. Welcome to Business News. The Debt Management Office, DMO, says the federal government raised $4 billion through Eurobonds to part finance the deficit aspect of its 2021 budget. In a statement released by the agency, the amount was raised after an intensive 2 days of virtual meeting with investors across the globe. The federal government had listed its $3 billion Eurobond in 3 tranches for investors, offering up to 8.6% for a 30-year tenure. The statement, however, explained that the order book peaked at $12.2 billion, which enabled the federal government to raise $1 billion more than the $3 billion it initially announced. According to the DMO, the size of the order book and the quality of investors demonstrated confidence in the Nigerian economy. We'll take a break here and return with a review of the stock market. Nigerian equities sank for the third day on the trot on Wednesday, with the benchmark index closing weaker by 0.08%. At the close of today's trading, market capitalization lost over 11 billion naira to close at 20.242 trillion naira. Moving on, the size of Wednesday's trade is 16% lesser compared to Tuesday, and as a result, 155 million units of shares valued at 1 billion naira exchanged hands in 3,256 deals. This transaction has casted doubt on the chances of buoyancy returning to the market any moment soon. On our top losers for today, financial services stock have been known to be the foremost driver of the stock's strong buzz, but investors have been keeping them at arm's length, especially since Monday, with Veritas Cap and United Capital heading to this retreat with a combined 47 kobo loss. On the gainers counter, Transco Odds and Farm Deco led 11 others with a combined 61 kobo gains. Moving on now to the global market, the FTSE, the Dow Jones and the Nikkei. London's FTSE recorded its best day in 2 months on Wednesday, extending gains aided by heavyweight commodity-linked and bank stocks, while investors awaited key central bank meetings for clue on a timeline for tapering policy stimulus. The Dow Jones also rallied 300 points today on Evergrande's crisis news and ahead of the Fed policy decision. On the other hand, shares in the Asia Pacific, that's the Nikkei stocks, closed lower with 0.67% loss. That's all on Stock Market Review. Over to Oyin for the rest of the news.
Thank you for that update, Bisola. We'll move on now to the foreign scene, where the Vice President of Sudan's ruling Sovereign Council has said politicians are to blame for Tuesday's attempted coup, saying the neglect of average citizens has created disenchantment. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok had said forces of darkness linked to ousted President Omar al-Bashir were behind the failed coup. On Tuesday, Sudan authorities said the military stopped low-ranking officers from seizing power, noting that it was a sign of its commitment to the country's transition. The authorities also said coup plotters had taken control of important locations and suggested that they had come pretty close to announcing a coup. Well, up next is Entertainment Report on News Now.
Shine Your Eye housemate saga is currently in his feelings following the unexplainable disappearance of his love interest, Nini. The love-struck housemate currently sports red eyes from shedding tears despite attempts by Pere and Angel to console him. Discovering her absence, Saga spent the entire night in front of the diary room hoping to get a word with Biggie. However, Biggie has remained silent on this matter. Earlier in the day, Nini was instructed by Biggie to take on a top-secret task of pranking the housemates by exiting the house for 24 hours. Nini has been in an undisclosed area in the house where she has access to view the reaction of fellow housemates to her mysterious exits. Fortunate Peter, popularly known as Fortune, the official photographer to Davido, is dead. The 24-year-old was the brain behind most of Davido's photos on Instagram and also a member of the singer's crew. According to multiple sources, the photographer drowned at a photo shoot location in Lagos. Until his death, the celebrity photographer worked with several celebrities, including Davido, Wizkid, Tiwa Savage, Burna Boy, Pato Rankin, Akon, DMW, and many more. Nollywood actress Tony Abraham has cleared the air over the alleged frosty relationship with Funke Akindele-Bello. In a recent radio chat, the mother of one said she has nothing against Akindele as they are colleagues without any grudges against each other.
She's my senior colleague and she's someone I respect a lot. So I don't know what people are talking about, trust me.
Abraham's comments may be connected to a recent social media outburst by Iyabo Ojo. And that is all that we have for you in the entertainment segment of News Now.
And in sports, Tottenham manager Nuno Espirito Santo has said Hurricanes' poor start to the season is due to a lack of cohesion in his team. Kane is yet to score a Premier League goal this term amid claims the striker is struggling due to a hangover from his failed attempt to force a transfer to Manchester City. Nuno, speaking ahead of Wednesday's League Cup tie at Wolves, admitted Kane has not been helped by Tottenham considering the lack of attacking threat. After winning their opening 3 league games, Tottenham have suffered 2 successive 3-0 defeats, including Sunday's loss to Chelsea. And that's the size of our bulletin this evening. We thank you for watching. I am Oyi Adekunle.